Boom! All right, ladies and gentlemen, say goodbye to delayed releases and unhappy developers. Our guest, Launchable ensures that your team stays ahead of the curve. So let's find out what that's all about. Let's get this one started. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life: prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Buzz. In today's high-speed tech landscape, the difference between leading and lagging behind can be determined by how efficiently we test our software. Our next guest is at the forefront of transforming this crucial phase of development and ensuring that teams are not just running faster, but smarter. By leveraging machine learning to pinpoint the 20% of tests that provide 80% of the value, he has redefined what it means to be proactive in the software development world. Companies now spend less while achieving more, thanks to shorter testing loops and happier development teams. So get ready to dive deep into the future of software testing and development with the visionary behind Launchable, Mr. Harpreet Singh. Now the party can begin. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me here. I must say, I have never seen my name pronounced with that much enthusiasm. So thank you for doing that.
Of course, man. That's what I do. It's fun, man. If I'm not having fun doing this show, I'm definitely not gonna do it anymore. So as long as I'm smiling, having a good time, and making my guests laugh and smile, I'm all good. That's where I want to be. Let's dive into this thing, Harpreet. Everyone who comes on the program is here to promote something. I mentioned what it is on the intro for you, but if you can kind of simplify it so that people understand what it is it that you do for a living?
I have a AI/machine learning company that we started about 4.5 years ago. Think of us actually building the factory that builds your software. So we are the guys behind it. So if you imagine like a factory floor with various machines put together, I've specialized in that in the last decade and a half or two now. And what we do here is part of this factory floor. You're testing stuff at various points, and there's a huge amount of inefficiency there. And we are bringing AI and machine learning to actually look at stuff there and see how we can improve that. What that means is there is this workflow that devs and engineers and QA go through, and that workflow is very manual, heavy cognitively, takes a while to kind of get things done there.
Mm-hmm.
And we are bringing AI as a co-pilot to help you through that workflow.
So you guys are pushing through most recently much faster than you had 10 years ago when you were first starting this thing out. Because I'd imagine with the emergence of AI going more public, there's a lot more tools, open source, to kind of help push past this. There's what I mentioned in the intro is you help identify 20% of the tests that help kind of really provide 80% of the value. When you're talking about the factory floor, we're talking about those tests. What is it that matters most? What is it that people are kind of skipping over when developing software that you guys are kind of help identifying and testing and clearing up?
Yeah. So first, we started about 5 years back. So it's not 10 years back. And the reason that's important is when I started this company, the first question that we asked ourselves is like, I think we were in the forefront of things where we said like AI and machine learning is about to come in. Can we look at this space and actually do something interesting and unique with these technologies, with data, right? Data is the new crude oil. How can we look at that and improve that? And that's sort of from day one, we've been an AI machine learning company. So in that space, what we do is when devs go through a workflow, they push some changes in, they push their code in, and then you run all the tests, right? And what we can do, where we started off with, is one of the features that you're calling out, is this notion that we can look at what changes have come in, and we can predict what's likely going to fail based on your past history. So, for example, Harpreet no longer codes. So, if he's pushing some changes in, he's likely to break stuff. So, we're going to prioritize, testing Harpreet stuff. Or, we are testing, you're pushing a website out, and only the login components of the website have changed, but we're still running all the tests, right? And we can quickly identify what's the core piece that's actually been changed and what's likely to fail. And if you can find what's likely to fail, if you can predict where the earthquake is coming from, you can target that area and get people to evacuate. So it's a poor analogy, but you kind of get the idea. We can predict what's going to fail, and we can just give that to devs and say, like, go test this first, and you can find your issues much faster, so you don't have to wait like a day or 2 days or 5 days to know what's going to go wrong, because we can just completely bring that up front.
That's definitely something that people don't anticipate, especially when things pop off. You have a product launch, and all of a sudden you're getting more traffic than you ever anticipated, or you're scaling your company, and all of a sudden you're splitting projects into multiple places, and systems not really designed to do those things. And I know that there are software developers out there or product leaders that face a number of different challenges, and it's almost like, well, there's other companies that can kind of help test this. What challenges are developers or product leaders facing that your company specifically addresses that differentiates from maybe your competition?
Yeah, so one of the, for better or worse, one of the things that me and my co-founder have done is we have always been on the leading edge of where things are at. We've entered domains where the terminologies have not yet come up because we're so far ahead. So, specifically reacting to what my competitors are doing, there are not too many competitors in the space, right? And that's not necessarily a good thing, right? It's like, if you have lots of competitors, then the problem is really well known. So, as an entrepreneur, I'm in the business of actually educating the market and saying, like, look, you actually have this problem, and here's how we solve it, right? So the question gets kind of redefined. So, for example, when you think about your testing effort, there are lots of companies that are doing testing that help you test stuff, right? You write more and more tests every year, you keep on adding those tests. And we are one of the very few companies that come in and say, like, why actually do you need to run all the tests? Like, let's think differently about this, right? And that's a very quote unquote Apple think different moment, because like everybody's been trained to test more and more, and we come in and say, like, no, you actually don't need to. Let's be smart about that. So we are in the place of educating the market on this, and that's what makes us unique with this approach that we've taken. Is it's a very different take on like the space. It's almost like, you go for, when I think of tests, I think of like, it's almost like paying taxes. You have to do it. Everybody does that, everybody knows that. And suddenly we are that advisor that comes in and says, like, well, let me save you some here, let me save you some there, and let me put that back into your pocket where you can use that somewhere else.
I kind of like that tax analogy. It's like, look, I get it. You need to file your tax return, but do you need to go into a corporate return if you're an individual? Do you need to go into depreciation if you don't have any assets in a business? Do you need to go and dive deep into this tax code and test all these different things if that doesn't apply to you, or if there's no relevance to what it is that you're doing? And I can understand that you're testing and testing and testing, but the question of why you're testing has to be relevant. There has to be a reason why, otherwise you're just testing to test. So there's the other side of that is, for those companies that do need to test certain things, I want to know what the answer is as soon as possible, right? I want to know that my software is gonna work like yesterday, not in the future. So what have you seen as far as the impact that your company has on velocity or efficiency to help develop or development teams in real life scenarios to get things to market faster?
Yeah. So the approach that we've taken is like a very risk-based approach. What that actually means is a company decides what's their risk appetite to bring, reducing their tests, right? So they are like, we give like a data-driven dial in the hands of customers. So they can actually drive anywhere between 40 to 90% savings in their time, right? And that's like 40 to 90% faster feedback loop. Um, that's one way, right? It's the devs are kind of getting that feedback much faster. But I'll take like one of our use cases. We've been used at BMW, so I think their next 7 series that is coming on is testing, their in-car dashboard or something equivalent. Um, is being They're using us, right? So like imagine you're a car company, you're doing this in-car dashboard testing, and there's only so many cars that you can spin up to test stuff. There's, everybody is congregating around, these expensive BMWs to test on. You can't just buy 100,000 more to test more, right? So by being smart about this, we can actually improve the throughput of like how many tests can actually be tested because we are testing the relevant bits. So we were able to save them like, we were able to drive 3x throughput on the same hardware. So they were able to get 3 times more testing done by being smarter about it on that, on that mechanism. And what that actually meant was we were talking to some developers who would, push their changes in, and they would go home, and then they would log in late in the night to see if their tests are actually running on the system. Now that doesn't happen. They get that feedback right there at work. So like that's generally how, we've been sort of used. That's one example.
And that's definitely a huge plus in a business to be able to get answers as quick as possible, not having to wait those time frames to get the answers that they're looking for. So let me ask you. You mentioned BMW. We talked a little bit about developers, but who's that ideal customer? Like if I'm a company and I'm developing some sort of software, at what point do I go, all right, I need to look out to Launchable and see if they can help me test my stuff? What's that ideal customer situation that you look for in a client?
Great question. So we sell to engineering teams, right? So managers and directors of engineering and quality. Where we come in is where quality becomes a priority in an organization. So think about this. You are a Series A company or a seed company or a Series B company. At that point, you're just basically running and trying to deliver as much features as you want. Quality is not high on your thing because you severely lack in features. But if you became like just pre-IPO or IPO, you have enough customers, or you're an enterprise, a la BMW or a la UKG and so on and so forth, your customers demand a level of quality coming out, right? You just can't ship features out and then say like, oops, we broke it because we were running too fast. So that's where we kind of come in. And the kinds of organizations we bring in have some level of sophistication in their delivery pipeline. If you have like individuals manually testing stuff, they're too far behind the curve. They would probably catch up in like 3 years. So think of teams that are delivering like multiple times a week or multiple times a month or like multiple times in a few months. Quality is an issue. That's where we kind of come in.
So you mentioned that I mean it's across multiple industries, right? When you're working with software
Exactly.
developers.
Yes.
So
So yeah, go
go
ahead.
for it.
No, so one of our philosophies is there's a very popular tool called Jenkins in this space, that pretty much drives every software delivery pipeline, that factory floor in every organization out there. And that's been written by my co-founder. His name is Kosuke Kawaguchi. And so we brought that sort of ethos here, which is we said like, well, you know what? We want to work across every organization. It's a horizontal solution. There's so many testing frameworks. We don't want to marry to one because you know what? Enterprises are complex, heterogeneous beasts. So we built a solution that is fairly extensible, that works across pretty much every tooling and every language out there.
So what you're saying is it easily integrates into whatever development workflow these developers are working on.
Exactly. So it works, the integration is pretty much less than an hour. It's like 4 lines of code in your development, continuous integration script, and that's about it. And then the machine learning learns, and then it starts predicting things, and then you come back and you just start using it. And it's almost like, to use this analogy, it's almost like hitting a turbo on the car. Suddenly things start moving faster without actually having to go through months and months of like cultural changes and so on.
Well, okay. So easily integrates across multiple platforms. You're much more efficient, much quicker in getting results. You're helping people, take that 20% and apply it to the 80% in value. How does Launchable ensure that it's accurate, that the tests that you put are reliable, so that you can make sure that your results are good, and it's not just a test, but then when it actually goes into real life, that the results are the same as the test?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's answered at multiple levels. So one, this is machine learning and AI. It's not magic. It gets things wrong, right? And when it gets things wrong, the way you measure machine learning and AI performance is through statistical measures. And those are the statistical measures that I was talking about that we give somebody, right? It's like, okay, I want like, 90% confidence here. And that gives me, 50% time back. 80% confidence gives me 70% time back, and so on and so forth. So the dial is always in your hand. The second thing we ask you is like, don't, we are not telling you not to test, right? So somewhere in your factory floor, we want you to run all the tests, but it's the, development of software is a very iterative process. It keeps on happening. These loops happen. So we can come in parts of the system where the loop's happening, and we reduce that time there. And the third thing is it's a machine learning system, which means, we look at what we got wrong, and we are always learning. So once we get something wrong, that information comes back, and the next time we learn from it, and then the model keeps getting better, and the model keeps getting better and better. So the longer you end up using the model, the better it gets about predicting, things, and it gets better.
Now, of course, it is going to get better, and I'm assuming that you're also, on top of receiving feedback from machine learning, you're also receiving feedback from the developers and product leaders themselves about the changes in their entire development process. What kind of feedback are you getting from them?
So the changes in the system that happen, it's almost like a, automate. It is not almost. It's an automated system. So think of this as a Tesla auto drive. By that, what I mean is like one way, what used to happen before the automatic drive is like I could look at the speedometer, I could look at the, empty gauge on, the gas gauge, and I made all these decisions on how I'm going to navigate the road, right? What Tesla Autopilot does is it looks at all these signals coming in, and then it makes a decision and it drives the car, right? So in a similar word, the feedback that is coming to us through the code, through the pipeline, and it is automatically being fed over. So they don't have to explicitly come back and tell us, oh, I did this, because that's all sort of running in that, autopilot mode, right?
That's the key.
That is the
The
key.
Right, that's the key to success. Where do you, I mean, based on where you are today, 5 years down the road from when you started, what do you see Launchable evolving into as far as support software development? Maybe in the way that you become more efficient, for productivity. Maybe in the industries that you think you're going to end up going towards.
Right. So, where the journey is going is we started, we've honed in on that one particular feature set. We started there, right? And, along the way, like this is part of the entrepreneurial journey, and it links to the previous question, which is like your customers come in and tell you, like once they start using something, they come and tell you, like, what, I actually need this, and I also need this and this and this. So you paratrooped into a zone with a solution, and then they kind of tell you where to go next, right? So as we built this, they came in and told us like, well, I actually have lots of tests that are unhealthy. We don't quite know how to handle those or even measure those, right? And guess what? With the data that we have, we can do that. So we built that. And then along the way, they came in and said like, the real reason we were using to reduce your test time is like, dev's time is very expensive. So we want feedback to come fast. And that what we are doing is we can use sort of generative AI and LLMs to sort of help them reduce the time it takes them to understand and do root cause analysis of underlying
Sorry, something's
issues.
not right. If it's still like this
And
in
the
a few
third
minutes,
thing
you
that
can try
where we are
troubleshooting
headed
in the Google
towards
Home app.
is
You can also
our
try unplugging your device.
our
and
general
plugging it
vision
back in.
is like, human time is really expensive. It's really valuable, and machines are like increasingly getting better, right? And so this software factory that we are talking about is entirely driven by humans. Like they put various components along the way, and it's inefficient because guess what? You can't go in every day and change the pipeline, right? So we actually ultimately see this pipeline being entirely automated by AI and by software, and it is automatically determining when and where to run what tests, and just completely making this a fully automated car versus a stick shift.
Now, let me ask you, because I'm going to go sci-fi fantasy here, but I think it would be pretty cool to have an iRobot type scenario where I have this machine that's there helping me do my day-to-day activities or whatever it is that I need to do. And I'd imagine something like that would have a number of different tests that you would need to run in order to make it work, especially if you're using it in the public sector. Is there any industry that you kind of feel you maybe want to gravitate to in the future, or do you kind of want to stay widespread like you are right now?
uh, Again, as entrepreneurs, you sort of put I'm thinking of like an octopus. You put your tentacles out there and you see what's coming back, and then some tentacle finds something and you grab it, right? So what we are finding is automotive and embedded systems is where people are finding a lot of value, right? So like, again, if you're running mobile tests, like you have a mobile device farm where you're testing, it's really expensive to set these device farms up, so you want to get more bandwidth. You can't spin up a car in the cloud. That's my favorite use case. So these automotive companies are coming and talking to us. Another one that we are seeing is like these companies that are building like SaaS services that have been going on for 5 or 7 years. That's probably more horizontal, but like those two on the top are our vertical answers.
So I got an Instagram question that says, does your software predict the problem before it happens?
That's a very wide question. So our software predicts which test is going to fail before that happens. Okay. And that test failure is indicative of a problem that is happening, right? So it's fairly specific. Um, and I'm saying that because an often asked question is, I actually never wrote tests here, but there's problem in the code. Can you help there? And we can't, because you ultimately have to write some tests for us to come in and say whether that's effective or not.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Testing, not necessarily predicting. All right. Well, if people want to reach out, they want to find out more about tests for maybe their software development or programs that they're working on. How can they do that?
You can come to Launchable Inc. That's launchableiNC.com. And there should be something on the website to get you to fill a form and talk to us. Or if you've been on this, you're listening here, you can send me an email, hsingh@launchableiNC.com.
Perfect. All right. Well, Harpreet, thank you very much for being on the program. I'll be honest, man, this is a little bit above my pay grade, but it was very interesting to learn about what you guys are doing, because it's definitely a useful tool, especially today when we're trying to be as efficient as possible, as quick as possible. Time is money. Time is what a lot of these companies need to get back, and your company is literally doing that. You're helping them get from an idea phase to an actual floor model of whatever it is that they're developing in a faster, more efficient time. So thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing with us. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all we got for you guys today. Catch you guys on the next one. Peace. And we're out.
Thank you very much.
It's over. Go home. Is your business in need of marketing? Try starting a podcast. But not just any podcast. Podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www.businessbros.com.